While no one knows what tomorrow may bring, Bridgestone is working toward a more positive outlook. With innovations like developing a tire using 75% recycled and renewable materials. It's just one of the many ways Bridgestone is making a difference today, for generations to come. Because that's what really matters. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Visit whatreallymatters.com to learn more.
You hear that? That's the sound of instant relief from nasal congestion by the #1 best-selling nasal strip brand in the world, Breathe Right. Breathe Right's drug-free, flexible, spring-like bands physically open your nose for increased airflow, allowing you to breathe easier, one breath at a time. We may not be able to put the feeling of instant relief into words, but believe us, you'll be able to feel it. Try us for free today at breatheright.com.
When you need mealtime inspiration, it's worth shopping Kroger for thousands of appetizing ingredients that inspire countless mouth-watering meals. And no matter what tasty choice you make, you'll enjoy our everyday low prices. Plus, extra ways to save, like digital coupons worth over $600 each week and up to $1 off per gallon at the pump with points. So you can get big flavors and big savings. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Fuel restrictions apply.
Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Sweden, joined as always by Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens. And on tonight's episode, we're going to break down the Norfolk Tides. Their 2024 season did not go quite as well as their historically dominant 2023 campaign. But there was still a lot to talk about this Norfolk team, which boasted the Orioles position, player, and pitcher of the year in the minor leagues. And we will get to all of that in just a moment. But first, Orioles on the Verge is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your #1 source for everything football. BetOnline has every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Think you know your stuff? Get in our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every week for your chance at weekly prizes and a share of $200K. When the game's over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or on one of our over 150 slots games. Head to the website today to get in on the action. Bet online, the game starts here. And we've come to the final minor league recap of the 2024 season. Minor league season is officially in the books. And the Norfolk Tides finished off with a record of 69-81, well short of the championship that they had last year. But it was still an interesting year. And this team actually got off to a very good start, going 7-2 over their first 9 games. But then after an April sweep at the hands of the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Rail Riders, they couldn't seem to get things quite on track, despite the fact that their offense finished in the top 5 in home runs, and they finished with the third highest strikeouts on the pitching side. There were some issues. Their 5.10 ERA was the 4th worst in the International League, and their offense led the circuit in strikeouts. So, Nick, I'll start with you here. There were nights that you could see pretty good baseball watching the Tides, and certainly your fair share of top prospects, so we'll break down tonight. But overall, it just seemed like maybe some instability, not having the depth that last year's team had, contributed to them struggling more this year.
Yeah, I think you saw a long stretch there where it was very like 2018, 2017 Norfolk Tides roster, where it's like Johnny Giovitella is cleanup hitter and the star of the show. Who is that? Doesn't matter. He's not in baseball anymore. It was a lot of nights like that. But still, I think outside of the top prospects, who a lot of those guys reached the major leagues. Kerstad's back up in the majors here and there, Holiday up in the majors, Mayo got up to the majors. Like the top prospects did their thing, and that's all I care about. Like that, I mentioned a previous recap. Like I know they're great things, people, jobs, money. I don't care about minor league team records and playoff appearances and all that. I want to see the top prospects continue to grow and develop, and I want to see some of these guys, these less heralded prospects, I want to see who breaks out. Are you taking steps forward in your development? That's all I care about. And we saw a lot of that. I think we even had some questions answered about guys like, if you still had questions about guys like Hudson Haskin and such, I think those questions were answered this year, unfortunately, not in a positive way. But yeah, I mean, a lot of guys like Daniel Johnson had a great season in Norfolk. That's solid AAA depth down there. I think the quad A guys, they did their job as well and just kind of did their thing, hang out in case of emergency if needed in the major leagues. So, but yeah, just sad I didn't get to go down to Harbor Park this year for when they were rocking with all these prospect heavy lineups. I only got down to Harbor Park one time this year, and it was for a Savannah Bananas game, which is not as entertaining actually as watching Kobe Mayo hit nukes, but still, good time.
Yeah, there were stretches where it was Norfolk is the game I'm tuning into. Early in the season, it was Kersad, Holiday, Mayo, and even Norby and Stowers were still hanging out there. And then there were stretches where it was Gene Segura, J.D. Davis, Daniel Johnson, Nick Maton, Garrett something they used to play for the Marlins. Yeah, it was just like is this a Dominican Winter League team right now? I don't know. But overall, you end the year with Fabian, Beavers, and Basayo on the roster. Like, nice little sneak peek at what it's going to look like at the beginning of next year. So, yeah, I mean, AAA, if nothing else, they have the best production crew. They have the best cameras. So it is nice to be able to see the upper echelon of the farm system in that environment with all the StatCast data and the quality production. So it's always going to be at least a little fun in AAA.
Yeah, when Norfolk's lineup was at its strongest, which was really in the beginning of the year when they had Heston Kjerstad, they had Kobe Mayo, they had Jackson Holiday for stretches early in the season, they were a lot of fun. They had that series at Charlotte where they put up 20 runs in a game, and you could tune in and see some really good baseball. I think that just because of some of the trades, Connor Norby being a guy that would have spent some time there over the last couple months of the season, that was moved, Kyle Stowers as well, and some of the injuries at the major league level kind of affected them. But there were stretches where the Tides were pretty fun to watch, and a big part of that was Mayo, who the Orioles named their minor league position player of the year last week. What Mayo did at AAA this year in 89 games was nothing short of impressive, belting 22 home runs while posting a 135 WRC plus. And to go along with that, hits 287 and has a walk rate of over 10% and a strikeout rate just under 25%, which I think you can live with when you have that kind of power. If nothing else, Mayo has now solidified himself as a consensus top 10, top 15, top 20 prospect in the game. His major league time over a small sample size maybe has not gone as well as we would have hoped, but he showed us this year why he could be a really special player and did so at 22 years old in AAA.
Yeah, that's the thing for me. It's the age, production, and level you're at. Kobe Mayo was fantastic in those regards. Yeah, the major league time, only 46 plate appearances, and they weren't good. It was a -7 WRC plus. He had a couple hits, couple moments, but still like 47, 48% strikeout rate. Not great, but like we talked about before, it's very easy to just kind of go, oh, it's the Orioles, Colton Cowser, Grayson Rodriguez, blah, blah, blah. Insert Kobe Mayo now. He takes his lumps at the major league level. He has the offseason. He's going to come back next year and be in the running for Rookie of the Year 2025. It's easy to say that, but I genuinely do believe that with him, just because I go back to when we broke down Mayo and Baseball America broke down Mayo with one of the deeper analytical dives I've ever seen on Mayo. And we talked about that article, and there's just so many glowing things about Mayo's performance down in AAA, his batted ball data, his swing profile, all of that portend to major league success. It's just, I feel like we always talk about how that jump from AAA to the majors is bigger than it's ever been. I think part of that is teams are more prepared than ever for these guys when they come up. They've got a full book on Kobe Mayo. They know exactly, if this guy, I hate to say this guy, Elliot, I think is his name, but if anybody can write an article about breaking down some guy analytically like that, a prospect like that who's in AAA, what do you think major league teams have on these guys nowadays? they're more than ready. And, now it's Kobe Mayo's turn. Go into this offseason and you rewrite his own book. How is he going to attack major league pitchers? Because major league pitchers don't miss. They rarely miss. So, yeah, I have all the confidence in the world in Mayo coming back next year stronger than ever. And where he plays defensively, don't care right now. Sold on the bat, 100%.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, we saw Colton Cowser looked absolutely dreadful in his time in the majors last year. What did he do? Oh, he's probably a bare minimum top 2 finisher and Rookie of the Year this year with 22 home runs and playing amazing defense when even that didn't look as good at the brief taste he got last year. So, yeah, Mayo's going to take everything that he got fed at the major league level this year and shore up any holes. And I think just it's a little bit of confidence too, right? I mean, you start slow, you start striking out. First pitch, ump calls a strike, could have gone either way, but it goes against you. Then it's a low and away slider that you swing and miss. And now you're 0-2 and you're guessing, and it just snowballs. So, yeah, start fresh, have a good spring next year, take it from there, and could very easily be 2025's Rookie of the Year contender for the Orioles, Mr. Kobe Mayo. Incredible season altogether. I wonder what it would have looked like if he didn't fall at the making that catch into the dugout. Would have made a major league debut sooner. Maybe could have adjusted quicker. But either way, future is super bright, and I think he'll be an Oriole till at least 2030. So let's get used to writing his name in the lineup.
I kind of view Mayo's major league time the same way that I viewed Colton Cowser's stint last year, which was that it was an inevitability that he was going to get to the major leagues. And certainly our expectations for what he could do were higher than what he ultimately delivered. But I also think that there is a part of it that the Orioles had their hands forced a little bit in ways they may not have wanted, coming off of Jordan Westburg's injury. And you look at what Mayo had to begin his major league career with. 3 games against a very tough Cleveland team. You have 2 against Toronto, which the Blue Jays are not the Blue Jays of recent vintage this year, but they can still play the Orioles pretty tough. And then a game against Tampa Bay, a game against Washington where he gets that hit and then he's sent down. He got that little bit of a cameo in September, but again was used kind of sparingly. And a lot of that is just because you don't want to put undue pressure on a 22-year-old rookie for a team that is fighting for a playoff spot and just can't seem to get anything going for itself, which is what the Orioles have been for most of September. So I do think that his debut probably came under less than ideal circumstances. And much like Colton Cowser did this year, Mayo is going to have to go into spring training and earn that roster spot next year. He doesn't have anything left to prove at AAA statistically, but there's a real chance that he goes back to Norfolk next year. The Orioles don't think that they can get him regular at bats. However, would I rule out him doing what Cowser did? Absolutely not. I think he's fully capable of that. So, we're a long ways off. And I know I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if Mayo has a big spring, I think he's got a shot at the opening day roster.
Yeah, and also Kobe was not alone as someone who was struggling in the last few months of this season. Jackson Holliday, I think in September, has like an OPS of 300 and something. So, yeah, it's unfortunately the offense has been struggling in general. And yeah, like you said, that's a lot of pressure to be like, oh, here comes this 22-year-old. He's going to save the day. No, you don't want to put that pressure on him. So, yeah, agree with a lot with what you guys are saying.
I'm glad you brought up Holiday because that's the next player that I was going to discuss. His time at Norfolk this year overall was productive. 346 plate appearances across 73 games, hit 271 with a 908 OPS. Once again, had excellent walk to strikeout numbers, walking nearly as many times as he struck out with the Tides, and showing more power than he has at any single level in his professional career by belting 10 home runs. Yet his major league time, for all of the expectations that were placed on him early on, and then coming back up in July, hitting the grand slam against Toronto, it felt like, all right, this is it. This is where he's going to ascend. And while I think Holiday overall has looked more comfortable at the plate the second go around, as Bob has said, the numbers have not been good over the months of September. And August was not a whole lot better for Holiday. So, yet, if you want to look for encouragement, you could look at what he did at AAA and figure out, okay, he overcame some adversity. He had an IL stint. He came off of that and looked really good as a glimmer for what could be the future with him. So I know we'll probably talk about this a lot more when the Major League season wraps up, but I want to get your guys' thoughts on Holiday's 2024.
On the plus side, I think his defense at second base has really improved throughout the year, and he looks pretty good out there to my eye. He's made some really, really nice plays defensively. At the plate, it just seems like he made that adjustment, and then teams just adjusted right back, and he hasn't been able to respond quickly enough. But he's also 20 years old, so it's a lot is just like he's too good for AAA. He's not quite good enough for major leagues yet. I think one off season of turning 21, being able to drink, and just having that experience, I think next year's going to be a whole different story. But yeah, he wasn't walking obviously like he did in the minor leagues and the major leagues, and he wasn't showing off the hit tool that he definitely has. Everyone's like, "Oh, I thought he had a 70 hit tool." He does. Relax. He's 20 years old. He'll be fine. But yeah, I think just kind of take your medicine learning experience for Jackson.
When the Orioles clinch, not if, and they may have already clinched by the time this episode comes out on the main podcast feed, if you're not watching on YouTube, do we think the Orioles also pull out the baby stroller with the non-alcoholic beer like they did for Jackson Churio in Milwaukee? That was hilarious. But yeah, with Holidays, yeah, you talk about the improved defense over there at second base. According to Fangraphs, he's been worth negative 0.3 F4 this season, but the issue hasn't been his defense. That rates pretty favorably. So yeah, it's again, same thing as Kobe. You look at what he did, his batted ball profile, his swing data, you look at all that with Jackson Holiday down in AAA, it was unbelievable for a 20-year-old at the AAA level who had nearly more walks than strikeouts. It was a 21.7% walk rate to a 22.3% strikeout rate. And that's across 346 plate appearances. That is a substantial sample size there. The hit tool is there. The eye is there. Like Bob said, major leaguers, like we talked about with Mayo as well, major league pitchers rarely miss, and they know exactly how to attack him, and they're able to carry out that attack plan, unlike AAA pitchers who really struggle to do that. So it's about, again, Holiday. And just the other night, I forget which game it was specifically, but then you have like the 2-run up the middle single, like help. That's a clutch hit. I love that play. He's not worried about hitting the home run. He just did his job. Drove the ball right up the middle, went with the pitch, drove in 2 runs. Beautiful. You'd like to see that more consistently, but I think this was a really good experience for him. And going back to what Connor was talking about on the last episode there, and having the adults in the room, right? Guys who have been there before. I also wonder, like, as far as the bats go, there's also with Mayo and Holiday, like the veterans were struggling as well. So it's like, who was really there to be like, hey, like you can get through this. I don't really know if anyone was able to do that with them because they're trying to figure out their own stuff at the same time. So I still think it's a fantastic learning experience, and nothing that I saw from Holiday or Mayo this year, even if Holiday doesn't make the playoff roster, I'm not expecting him to be on the playoff roster. Great learning experience for both these guys, and feel uber confident heading into 2025.
Before we move on and start talking about the pitching staff, a couple of quick notes. Zud Fabian, Samuel Basayo both had stints in Norfolk to end the season. Neither of them really gave you a full sense, good or bad, I think, of how they were performing at AAA, but I think you still saw enough to know what they need to work on to be more successful there next year. Dylan Beavers gets a 1-week cameo at the very end of the season, and then you had some guys play out the end of their time in the Orioles organization, largely with Norfolk and Connor Norby and Kyle Stowers. The Tides also had Heston Kjerstad for 56 games, and he put up really good numbers there. So there's some other smaller things to unpack with the Tides lineup. What stood out, good, bad, or maybe even indifferent when you look at Norfolk?
Good. I was going to say Basayo. I know the overall numbers don't look great. I think we talked about this last week with the Buoy recap, but he had a number of multi-hit nights down there. I'm pretty stoked to see him as the primary catcher. next year for Norfolk. And I think we know what the bat is. We know it's pretty special. I don't see it diminishing at all. So looking ahead to next year, I'm excited to pay attention to the defense more. Hopefully there's more written about the defense and get a better idea of what his role could be at the major league level. Fabian, Beavers, just keep doing what you're doing. I don't, hopefully, like, there's no rush to bring those guys up next year and they can sit and marinate in AAA as long as possible. And same thing, I'm excited to see where their trajectories take them. Maybe one of them isn't in the organization because of a trade this offseason. Who knows? But yeah, the bats, I'm trying to find even like there's anybody else to talk about with the bats. Taryn Baver came back. That was cool, I guess. Yeah, I guess the only other thing I had was like Hudson Haskin. If you want to look, if you want to still consider him a prospect or not, I just think the hamstring and hip injuries kind of zapped him. He did steal 22 bases this year, which I did not think he was capable of, and walked at a really decent rate. But he was still batting like 7 or 8 in Norfolk's lineup most nights. Even on those lineups that had a bunch of nobodies, he's still batting at the bottom of the order. And I just don't think you can trust that body to hold up moving forward, unfortunately.
Yeah, Basayo, I mean, really rough start. In his first 7 games was 4 for 31 with 1 walk, 1 home run. But then over the last 54 plate appearances from September 5th on, batted 280 with a 793 OPS, walked much more often than that, struck out less, 105 WRC plus. So you can already see the adjustments being made. I think, again, another year, he'll be 20 years old going into 2025. Another year of just growing stronger, just more mature. I think he's he'll be a top 5 prospect in baseball. I think he'll be number 1 at some point, probably, just because he'll be around until most likely late into the season, if not into 2026 prospect eligible. So yeah, very, very excited for him next year. That'll be the prospect everyone will be watching and focusing on, and I think it's warranted. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way he ended the year.
Moving on to the pitching staff now, I think that
this episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Because Progressive offers discounts for paying in full, owning a home, and more. Plus, you can count on their great customer service to help you when you need it. So your dollar goes a long way. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save on car insurance. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states or situations.
Did you know Bridgestone developed a tire using 75% recycled and renewable materials? Making a difference today for future generations. That's what really matters. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Visit whatreallymatters.com to learn more.
So much of what we want to do can seem impossible, but the highest achievers among us are the people still reaching for something. The ones who aren't satisfied to stay where they are and want to keep climbing higher. It's those people who approach the impossible and embrace it. There's a vehicle for people like that. It's called the Defender. The Defender is an icon, reimagined through thoroughly modern design. It's got a tough, rigid body design and durable, lightweight monocoque architecture for extra strength. With precise detailing and compelling proportions, the exterior of the Defender is designed with integrity. This is a vehicle capable of great things, engineered to meet challenges head-on, with an exterior that's been tested to the extreme. Experience the Defender's legendary capability, off-road and on. And there's a family of vehicles for Defender. Meet the Defender 90, Defender 110, and the 8-seat Defender 130. So are you ready to embrace the impossible? Explore the Defender at LandRoverUSA.com.
I won't let my moderate to severe plaque psoriasis symptoms define me.
Emerge as you. In 2 clinical studies, Tremfya guselkumab, taken by injection, provided 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks in 7 out of 10 adults with moderate to severe plaque psoriasis. In a study, nearly 7 out of 10 patients with 90% clearer skin at 16 weeks were still clearer at 5 years. At 1 year and thereafter, patients and healthcare providers knew that Tremfya was being used. This may have increased results. Results may vary.
Serious allergic reactions may occur. Tremfya may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and tuberculosis. Tell your doctor if you have an infection or symptoms of infection, including fever, sweats, chills, muscle aches, or cough. Tell your doctor if you had a vaccine or plan to.
Emerge as you. Learn more about Tremfya, including important safety information at tremfya.com or call 1-877-578-3527. See our ad in Food and Wine magazine. For patients prescribed Tremfya, cost support may be available.
The guy we got to start with is obvious, and that's Brandon Young, who was named the Orioles Minor League Pitcher of the Year on Friday for the excellent 2024 campaign that he had, most of which was at Norfolk. In 89 innings of the Tides this year, Young posted a 3.44 ERA while striking out 96 batters and walking 33. And he mastered what has become a really tough jump between AA and AAA for pitchers. Not that it wasn't always tough, but in recent years, you've had the change in baseball at the AAA level. You've also had the introduction of the automated ball strike system and the talent system. And what we've seen in that in the last 2 years, the International League has started to tilt more towards hitters than it typically had in the past. Young, however, seemed really comfortable at the AAA level. And as I said in a Patreon exclusive episode on Friday, I think the only reason we didn't see him in the major leagues this year is that by the time it got to the point where the Orioles needed to promote him, the need for starting pitching was not as dire as we had thought it was going to be, because they could put together 5 healthy and mostly productive starters week to week. So they didn't need Young. But had they needed him, he certainly was making a strong case for major league time at AAA. And now he goes into what is going to be a pretty big offseason for him, because of all the players that are Rule 5 eligible that have not been added to the 40-man roster yet, Young is seemingly the only lock. And what's impressive is that he did all of this coming off of Tommy John surgery. Coming into this season, he had only thrown 53 1/3 combined innings over the last 2 seasons. So, Bob, I'll start with you. Young has risen up our list. He's getting a lot more attention nationally. What did you see from him this year that stood out?
Just honestly, consistency. Being able to come back from the injury, get off to a good start, which turns out was not as good as he was in AAA. In AA Bowie, he had a 4.09 ERA, only 22 innings, 36-4 strikeout to walk ratio, pretty ridiculous, and then goes up to AAA and throws about 90 more innings, 3.44 ERA, more strikeouts than innings pitched, just to be consistently out there every 5-6 days and throw over 100 innings this year after being out for so long. I mean, that to me was the most impressive, and he didn't lose anything throughout the year. So to be able to go into the off season and be like confident that he can have a full healthy season with his reconstructed arm, his elbow, it's got to be good. And the award and the accolades can't hurt either. I think he's definitely coming into spring training looking to win a job in the starting rotation. And who am I to doubt him at this point? I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we clinch early in the week, if maybe they throw him on the 40-man roster just at the very tail end and get his feet wet with a start against the Twins on Saturday or Sunday, just to say why not.
Yeah, I think that's the big. I didn't realize how many innings he had thrown this year. Actually, 111 total innings this season after just 40 innings last year, 13 the year before that. Like Zach said, 53 combined innings over the last 2 years. Like that's, and coming off Tommy John surgery, I think he set himself up tremendously well for next year. To be able to throw 111 innings after essentially missing 2 straight seasons and a second Tommy John surgery, it wasn't even his first, it was a second Tommy John surgery. I think that's pretty huge. And like Bob mentioned about not losing stuff as the season progressed, if I can get this to load real quick, his last couple starts here in September, he made 4 starts in the month of September, 5+ innings in each of them, 20 innings, 16 strikeouts, 7 walks, 3.54 ERA, pretty solid there. Like he ended on a super high note. There was the walk rate. I know there was issues. Somebody I know had reached out after his first couple starts in Norfolk and was like, that walk rate is tremendously high. Like what's going on there? Is that something to be concerned about or a blip? I mentioned this because he was sick. They pulled him early that game. That was the blip on the radar that inflated those numbers. They came down to around like 8% in total in AAA. Pretty solid, all things considered as well. Yeah, it's Young. Like, he's not the kind of guy who you're like, oh, we don't need starters. We don't need to go out and sign more starters because we got McDermott and Young in the wings. No, you go sign starters, please. Go trade for him, please. But like, Young's going to be right there in the mix for a starting rotation spot in spring training. And if he doesn't get it from the jump, he'll be in the major leagues at some point next year. And I do agree. He might be the only guy added to the 40-man roster at this point as far as Rule 5 eligible guys go. That's a pretty darn good guy, though, to add to your roster moving forward.
And let's talk about McDermott now, who did make his major league debut this year, making one start against the Marlins back in July. At Norfolk, he put together another productive season, 3.89 ERA and 104 innings pitched, 147 strikeouts to 62 walks. And while he did have a late season injury, he did manage to come back and pitch last week, delivered 3 scoreless innings in his final outing of the year, a short start. And if you look at anything with McDermott, you could quibble about the walks, that maybe the command didn't improve to the extent that you would like for it to have in his second go-around AAA. But this is something that's worth pointing out. He walked 15 batters over his first 12 innings this year. And then after that, it seemed like things kind of leveled off and settled down. He would still have starts in there where the walk totals were a little bit high, but overall, he overcame that rough patch that he had at the beginning of the year, which I think is understandable when you consider that his season ended somewhat early the year before, coming off a back injury. Command took a little bit of time to settle in, but once it did, he was really good for this Tides team. There's a lot that we could talk about with McDermott. We could talk about what he did this year. We could talk about what his role is in Baltimore going forward. Is he a starter? Is he a reliever? But I think one thing we can't deny at this point is that since McDermott has come over the Orioles organization, he's made a clear progression, now considered by most outlets to be a top 10 prospect in the system and arguably its top pitching prospect. Nick, what do you think the Orioles have in Chase McDermott?
I feel more confident in saying that Chase McDermott is going to have a pretty successful major league career and be an impact arm for this team. He's got the traits to be a successful starter. He's got the fastball velo, he's got the extension. You hear all the time, especially like I know Fangraphs has been high on this belief that he is. You look at all of his traits, he screams late bloomer, and you add injuries on top of that. I still think this is a guy who, the age thing, we've talked about this a lot in the past, how he's an older prospect. I don't really mind that as much with McDermott because I still think there's a pretty wide gap between who he is now and what his ceiling can be. And the walks being the major issue, I feel like, again, I feel like there was a conversation recently about pitching, again, to reference Rates and Barrels. I listen to other things, not just Rates and Barrels, I promise. But they have great conversations most weeks. And they were talking about, pitching traits and drafting pitching traits and everything. I think it was that episode. Either way, they were talking about how like control is still something that you can teach. Even when you get to the major leagues, like you can still teach that. That's still something that can be improved upon. And I tried to look back real quick earlier. I think we're seeing that with Dia Hall in Milwaukee already at the major league level as he's working as a starter, having some intermittent success there as he's trying to remain fully healthy and get a consistent role with his innings. But like if McDermott can do that as well, that's going to be a pretty quality arm for you. But I still feel even more confident this year after watching what he did in Norfolk. I feel even more confident in saying if he doesn't crack the rotation, the Orioles would send him down to Norfolk to continue to work as a starter. But man, still think he could be that lights out late inning relief arm if you need him midway through next season.
Yeah, there's a wide range of what his ultimate outcome could be. Maybe poor man's Kyle Bradish in the middle of a rotation is the upside. The downside, quote unquote downside, is a high leverage reliever. I think bare minimum, he's a quality arm in a major league pitching staff. So he's a major league pitcher. He's got the stuff. He doesn't get hit hard. He strikes out a bunch of batters. The only thing that's to be determined is he going to be a starter or a reliever? But happy to have him under our wings here for the next 6-7 years. it's definitely going to come in handy. That's for sure.
I do want to bring up Cade Povich for a moment because Povich did have a lot of time in Norfolk this year. And although we'll talk about him more when the season ends, it's worth noting that after a really up and down stint with the Tides in 2023, he was pretty dominant out of the gate for them this year and ultimately put together 77 and 2/3 of really good baseball with Norfolk. And right now, a key part of the Orioles pitching staff as they make the push for the playoffs, and a guy that I think you could at least pencil in for a rotation spot in 2025. What did you guys see from him at AAA that allowed him to be successful the second time around?
I steal Bob's answer that he had with McDermott. It was a consistency. I think we talked about that specifically as what we wanted to see more than anything with him at the end of the last season, because he would have those starts in 2023 when he was in Norfolk where he goes through that first inning, he looks like an ace, swing and miss stuff, 3 up, 3 down, real quick, couple strikeouts and a ground out. And then the second inning, he gives up 6 runs on 6 hits, 5 of them are home runs. And it's like, what is going on? He was so up and down. And this year, it was from the jump. He had a couple blips on the radar, but the walks were much better, more swing and miss, more strikeout stuff. I think a lot of people, especially when Povich struggled early in the majors, I think a lot of people had higher expectations for Povich when I think he's doing exactly what I had hoped he would be doing in the major leagues right now. Like I've always envisioned Povich as this guy who could be a really solid 4 or 5 for you. He's going to get roughed up some nights, but when he's on, he's on. As long as he can continue to pound the strike zone, he's going to be an effective pitcher for you. It's the velo may not be there. Some of the traits that successful pitchers have may not be there, but he makes it work with his super deep arsenal. I don't know. I think he's going to be a solid 4 or 5 in this rotation for a couple more years to come. He may not have the ceiling that McDermott does, but he's showing right now, as we talked about recently, his last 5-6 starts in the majors, those strikeout numbers have been phenomenal. And I think he's got a little bit more juice that we can tap into over the next year or so.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a 6-pitch mix. All 6 of his pitches, he threw 8% or more. I mean, that's going to take longer to develop. He's more, like you said, less stuff, more just pitch mix and putting a game plan together and being able to land a curveball. And I just think he's a guy that, and all of our pitching prospects have Bradish, Rodriguez, they've needed time to adjust, and I think he has. I think it's underreported the amount of progress he's made as the season went on. Over his last 7 starts, 36 and 2/3 innings, 4.91 ERA, but 42 strikeouts to 10 walks, FIP of 3.55. So that sounds good. But then his last 4, if you take it down to just September starts, 22 innings, 3.27 ERA, 3.17 FIP, 2.91 xFIP, 30 strikeouts to 7 walks. Yeah, he's getting there. I think it's a little under the radar. I think I would be shocked if he's not in the rotation to start next year, just because he's, let's see, how many total innings does he have in the majors? I'm looking at it. It's 74 innings, and he'll probably get another start, so close to 80 innings this year in the majors. I think that's way more than we would have expected coming into the year and said as much on preview episodes. So great development season for Cade Povich.
Nick talked about how this season probably allowed us to figure things out about some position players at Norfolk. And you could say that that was true to an extent about the pitching staff as well, because there were some hurlers, especially out of the bullpen, that struggled a little bit more than we expected. Wanderson Charles, who looked like he was going to be possibly a breakout story, ended up really struggling with the Tides. 25 and 2/3 innings, walked 28 batters, posted an 8.42 ERA, clearly showing that the command issues were not something he was going to be able to overcome in the organization. But then on the flip side, you had Nolan Hoffman put together another really nice year. Trey Mago gave them a lot of good innings out of the bullpen before he was flipped in the Eloy Jimenez trade with the White Sox. Then you also have Justin Armbruster, who had, for my money, one of the more bizarre seasons of any prospect in recent memory, because he comes out after another really solid year in 2023, throwing harder, but the results were much worse than what we've seen in the past. Bad first half, and then goes out in the month of July, dominates, looks like he's starting to get back to his old form, only to really struggle in August and be slightly better in September, but still not the Justin Armbruster we saw in 2022 or 2023. And then you also had some guys that have good stuff, but that were roughed up a little bit by AAA hitters out of the bullpen, whether that's Carlos Tavera or Cade Stroud. There's a lot of takeaways we could have, good and bad, from the rest of Norfolk's pitching staff, but what in that jumps out, and I do actually want to focus on Armbruster for a moment, because we've been high on Armbruster for a while. He had his moments this year, but overall it was a tough season.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the team ERA was without him in the mix, because he threw a lot of innings in a 7.5 ERA there. Yeah, that's pretty rough. Wipe the slate clean, give him another chance in 2025 and see what you have, but very disappointing. Real quick on Cade Stroud. Underreported again, last 2 months for him. He might have started to figure something out at AAA. I know it was terrible overall numbers and had a really, really rough stretch soon after being promoted there, but over the last 2 months of the season, in 20 and a third innings, he had a 3.10 ERA, 2.98 FIP, struck out 33% of batters. So maybe still hope for the 27-year-old relief prospect, because the stuff is there. It's just a matter of putting it together. But yeah, Justin Armbruster, maybe next year he's the guy they turn into the bullpen. Just turn him over as a reliever and see what he can do, because I don't know, even if he could eat the innings, I don't know if a 7.5 ERA is going to cut it at this level.
Yeah, Cade Stroud, I feel like that was his story last year too. It was god awful, and then he turned it on at the end of the year. Turn it on sooner, and you might get to the major leagues. I also want to, before I go into my Armbruster thing, we got to shout out Luis Gonzalez. Like, how do we not see this guy make any major league appearances this season? I do kind of get it, because you keep finding that the Colin Selbys and guys like that who have more explosive stuff. They're younger, more explosive arms, but still, it's like Gonzalez used to be a top 30 prospect in this system. He was here from 2013 to 2019, hadn't pitched in the U.S. since 2021, pitched fully healthy out of Norfolk's bullpen all year with a 29% strikeout rate and a walk rate under 5%. ERA was 4.5, but that was below league average, which was like 4.9 this year, I think, when I looked earlier. The FIP was a run lower than that. It just kind of, I don't think he has like a future role on this team. I just think it sucks that we didn't get to see him. He's yet to make his major league debut. He's about to be 33, and he's had like a 14-year pitching career in professional baseball. I wanted to see him make his big league debut. Even if it's get the big league debut, you add him to the 40-man, and then you got to DFA him and he's gone. That was unfortunate. But yeah, with Armbruster, like, I don't think nothing really changed from the last time we talked about him, in my opinion. He did flash a couple outings down the stretch, but the walk rate was like 12% this year. That was rough. The home run rate skyrocketed. He can eat innings, like Bob mentioned. He did have decent swing and miss stuff. Maybe he is more effective out of that relief role. Coming into the year, I really loved the data on a lot of his pitches, especially the fastball. It just never got it going for him this year. I think he is Rule 5 eligible as well this offseason. It's very easy to see, like, leave him unprotected and he stays in the org next year after not being selected. And I think that's probably what happens. But I was thinking about it, like, maybe if the Orioles are still believers in Armbruster and they think they can unlock a little bit more and he can have some role moving forward, I mean, do they protect him just to be completely safe? And then, like, they DFA him later, like in spring training, and try to sneak him through waivers to get him back in the org and maybe try to punt that decision a few more months down the road. I don't know, but it's unfortunate that after what he showed in 2023, that this is where we're at with him now at the end of 2024.
You know, that Rule 5 scenario, I don't think he gets protected, but I also don't think it's that far-fetched that the Orioles decide to give him a spot. You know, it could be kind of a Logan Gillespie situation from a few years ago where, yeah, maybe the results aren't great, but we really like the stuff. And we do feel like another organization is going to take him if we leave him unprotected. And, you know, again, I don't think that he would be taken by another team. and then he would have to stick if he is taken by that team, which is a separate question in and of itself. But I also don't think it's far-fetched that some organization has enough data on Armbruster that they think, okay, we'll take him. We like these traits. We'll bury him in the bullpen all of 2024. And if he posts a 5 ERA over 70 innings of relief work, what does it matter? At least we've got him in the org now. We can work with him and figure out how to get better results from him. That's what it would take. And I don't think it's likely, but it's also not that far-fetched. And then for Stroud, I'll just say this. I feel like Nick was just talking about what Cade Povitz's season at Norfolk looked like in 2023, where he could have outings where he looked dominant one inning, would struggle in the next, or he could put together a couple of good starts only to have it followed up with one that was just disastrous. I kind of feel like that's where Stroud was this year. He's a one-inning reliever, pure three-out guy, and that's fine. He's got the stuff to do that. But he could put together 3 or 4 really good outings in a row. And then he would have this one outing in there where things would just go off the rails. Not getting the strikeouts, walking too many guys, giving up a lot of hits. And next thing you know, he's giving up multiple runs in an inning of work or less than an inning of work. And what I think happened is that as the year went along and he got down into the final 2 months of the season, he was more successful in avoiding those. So the consistency was there. And if you want to look at a silver lining from his season, yes, the overall numbers aren't great, but the consistency started to show itself at the end of the year when it hadn't before.
Agreed. I think there's going to be some interesting arms. I know the general consensus was Norfolk bullpen was hot garbage, but I think there were some bright spots. And I think I wouldn't be shocked if the organization sees a few brighter spots as well. Nick Vespi. No, we can wrap it up. It's done.
You mean you don't want to have that debate for the 85th time? Why they bring him up and not leave him up?
No. It's almost 11 o'clock at night. I don't want to talk about Nick Vespi. Sorry, Nick.
Question might have been answered this year. I don't know. Solid arm to have his depth for sure.
And with that does it for this week's episode. We will have more info on next week's show. As we get closer to that, we'll have to see how things play out with the Orioles. We might be previewing the playoffs. We'll determine the night that we're on when we get closer to that and we know exactly what we're going to be breaking down. So look for that, and you can find that in many different places on the internet, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, TikTok, and YouTube. We're also over at Substack, OriolesOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing the internet, be sure to sign up and become a member of our Patreon community. We will have exclusive content well into the offseason and perhaps a little bit during the postseason too. And don't forget to mark your calendars for October 14th. We will be at Checker Spot Brewing Company, located not far from Camden Yards in Baltimore, for our second live show of the 2024 season. That will begin at 6 p.m. We love hanging out at Checker Spot. Always a good time. We hope to see you there. They're located at 1421 Ridgely Street in Baltimore. And once again, that is October 14th, a Monday at 6 p.m. Connor Newcomb, who was on our show earlier this week, will be on. We have him penciled in for that. And we look forward to announcing more guests here in the coming weeks. For Bob Phelan and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spedden. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, presented by BetOnline and part of the Believe Podcast Network.
While no one knows what tomorrow may bring, Bridgestone is working toward a more positive outlook. With innovations like developing a tire using 75% recycled and renewable materials. It's just one of the many ways Bridgestone is making a difference today, for generations to come. Because that's what really matters. Bridgestone, solutions for your journey. Visit whatreallymatters.com to learn more.
Bingo.
All right, Phil, we're recording now, so it's live. Go ahead. Pick on me the way that you want to.
Did I say that? I wouldn't say that to my son. Man, I mean, come on, man.
Just go. This isn't CBS.
All right, be quiet for a few seconds. Why would people want to listen to the Sims Complete podcast? Well, a couple things. One, if you like to see sons pick on their father, this might be the place. If you want to see a place where the father just kicks the out of his son, this would be the place. What do you like about it, Matt?
Ditto. Father-son dynamic duo talking about the game of football that we love and share and appreciate together. And, you know, hey, it's an extension of what we did, right? Growing up, I was able to watch my father play football, then obviously watch him as a broadcaster. And then he taught me the game of football and share the wisdom that he learned throughout his playing career. And, you know, hey, sometimes we're full of it and sometimes we actually know a thing or two.
Well, we do a lot of research. At least I do. You're a little spotty, but, you know, you hang in there. It's fun. I love doing this, and it's been awesome.
Sims Complete. Check us out wherever your podcasts are available on the Believe Network. Appreciate it. See ya.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.